Today we are nitpicking. Nick Caserio had a press conference. The media was there. What did he say? And I'm calling cap on some of the things that came out of his mouth.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, welcome to today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast. I'm John Hickman. That's Brian Big Sars Barfield. We are both your credentialed media members and Texans insiders. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and next week, even on Saturday, because the draft is here. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's show, we'll be diving into the O-line investments through the draft. Why Nick Caserio, and I thought this was a great question by Landry Locker, who used to be on 610, has his podcast on YouTube. Great question by Landry. The investments from the offensive line just hadn't paid out yet. And so we'll look into that. 25 options on a dresser. Yes, sir. The Houston Texans currently pick at 25. Nick Caserio is confident that they will find a player either at that pick or around that pick. We open up today's show looking at Nick said what? Cut the cap. We'll dive into what I'm talking about with that. But Big Sarge.
Greetings and salutations, John Hickman.
I'm excited for today's episode, man. We'll be looking at some of the things that Nick Caserio said. Sarge, you had an opportunity Wednesday afternoon to be at the NRG as Nick Caserio sat down for the press conference a week before the draft. So he's giving everybody that covers the Houston Texans some good content. What were some of your biggest takeaways from that press conference? And honestly, what did you walk away with feeling?
One of the biggest takeaways I got is that Nick Caserio says, and I kind of believe him, that they don't have a true definite number one draft pick as far as when it's their time to pick at 25. If they stay at 25, Nick also kind of hinted around to, well, we may stay there, we may not, we may move up, we may move back. He's one of those guys, you know. Him and Slick Caserio, they have a lot in common, you know. They say a whole bunch of words and then you just be like, wait, what are you saying? Okay, I got it. But I like the fact that he did meet with us. He did talk about, you know, some of the things that has happened in the offseason. He talked about some of the offensive needs, some of the things going into the draft. I like the fact that he said that a lot of times you look at it and you hear this nonsense and all this. He said this noise and this trash around the draft talk, you know, the draft chat and what they're going to do and what their draft board looks like. And that's when he basically said our draft board is all over.
Also dropped the F-bomb too.
Yeah. Oh, so that's exactly
that was new.
And that's exactly what I was getting ready to say because in there, he said earlier in the press conference, he said, you know, there's been a lot of mistakes made. I have made a lot of mistakes. And he raised his hand. He's like, look, I'll be the first one to admit I made a lot of mistakes. So later on in the press conference, I came back and I asked him, I said, Nick, you stated earlier that you've made a lot of mistakes in the past. I won't ask you what those mistakes were. And he said, you guys effing talk about them all the time. So, and he started laughing, of course. But then I went on to ask him on what he has learned from his mistakes, and how he can use them going into this draft. And he said, I think you just go to be open-minded. There will be things that happen. Honestly, just try to take it one day at a time and just try to do consistent dialogue and communication with the people in the building. I mean, I've talked about this publicly. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with D'Amico. I love working with him and having conversations. We're just trying to put the organization in the best spot and help each other. And so I like that. I like that, one, that he can admit that he has made mistakes. And you go back and you can look at some of the mistakes that he has made here during his tenure with the Houston Texans. And look, sometimes, John, Nick gets a bad rap. right? Nick gets a bad rap because Nick had to come in, and when Nick came to the Houston Texans, Bill O'Brien had already burned the franchise to the ground.
Absolutely.
Nick came in and he's saying to himself, well, wait a minute now. Y'all sold me when y'all sold me this property, it was a nice, it was beautiful. It was built on a nice foundation. When you wanted me, it was still built on a nice foundation. But then after we've, closed on it, I done paid the taxes on it, everything, I done got the big key and the welcome home mat or whatever the case may be. And I show up and there's no house. Okay, so what happened to the house? Yeah, so the previous owner burned it down. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give you a
bad tenant.
Right. So we're going to give you a discount. So I'm saying all that to say that, what Nick has been able to do to revitalize and to revive and re-energize this franchise, you got to look, I give him a big Sarge salute because when he walked into a mess, he walked into a situation like, man, what the hell is going on around here? And all he's done was been able to put it together. And when you're doing things like that, you're going to make mistakes. When you're putting things back together that you've never done before, Nick had to build a house that he ain't never been in construction. So I got to give him a pass.
But my biggest takeaway from Nick Caserio, I want y'all to hear what he had to say about they never draft for need.
When you look at what you did in free agency, do you feel like it puts you in a position where you don't have to, obviously no one wants to draft purely for need, you have it set up where you can be flexible as far as positions and BBPA?
Yeah, well, we've never drafted for need around here. I mean, we're never going to. So we're going to pick the best player that we feel fits our program, regardless of the position. I'd say other than quarterback, I'd say pretty much any position's on the table. So like it always is. So try to stay true to our board. That's the reason we grade the players. So we put the players on the board, we grade them accordingly, we value them accordingly relative to what we think the role is going to be, and then we take them off the board as we see fit. So, that's not going to change.
Shout out to Aaron Wilson. Was his question. Nick Caserio, I'm calling cap on that. And this is what I talk about when we talk about Nick. Slick. Whoever he wants to be right now. And I say that jokingly, of course. The Texans absolutely draft for need. They drafted Davis Mills in 2021 due to the Deshaun Watson situation. They needed a quarterback. In 2022, you drafted Kenyon Green because the previous year, a disappointing Max Sharpen and Titus Howard was playing guard, and they wanted to move him back over to his natural position. You also drafted Derek Stingley that year because Terrence Mitchell was your CB2, and he was on a one-year deal. 2023, both CJ and Will were major needs. Tank was necessary. Kamari was necessary and needed in 2024 because he was drafted after Miles Bryant, CJ Henderson, and Jeff Okudah, two of the three guys that are no longer on his roster, all signed one-year deals, and the relationship with Steven Nelson and D'Amico Ryans deteriorated, and he was not brought back. So, Nick, all you confirmed today for me is Rockets in 5. But seriously, it sounds like he just gave us the play. It's a confirmation that they are either going to take an offensive lineman or a wide receiver with their first pick in the NFL draft this year. Because the Houston Texans absolutely draft for need. There is rarely a time where teams go best player available, and that best player available isn't an absolute need for that team at that moment. And so, I'm sorry, Nick, I just can't buy that.
John, listen.
I can't buy it.
Real quickly, John. I'm just not going to let you call cap on Nick Caserio like that. Only because I have the receipts. I have the video evidence. I have the video proof that D'Amico said the same thing at the NFL Combine. D'Amico said the exact same thing at the NFL Combine. He said, we take best player available. And John, in his answer, he said outside of quarterback, right? He said outside of quarterback. He said outside of quarterback. So you got to remove CJ Stroud, which, but by the way, was the best player available at the number 2 spot. Then they went for at the number 3 spot in that same draft. They got the best player on the defensive side of the ball, best player available. Kamari Lassiter, best player available. Kalen Bullock, best player available. But he was the best player available though, and he's proved it. When you got Tank Dell, best player available for what, but he was still one of the best players available. John, listen, when you talk about Nick and you talk about what he did in the first year, John, we just talked about it. He was a first-year GM. I don't think, and he got, listen, they did a very good job of picking Derek Stingley Jr. and him becoming an all-pro, something that they definitely, you're right, they needed a cornerback, but he was the best player available, John. So I think that what Nick says, like it's 50%, you can say it's 50% false and 50% true, whichever way you want to go. But you look at need, but you also look at they drafted the best player available at what they needed.
When we come back, we got to look at 25 options the Houston Texans could stay at 25 or they could trade back. We'll dive into all of that and more on the Nick Caserio Nitpicking Show.
There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, and even when demand is sky high, prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Houston Rockets fans, your team is hosting their first playoff game since 2019. You better make sure that you go to the Game Time app. Use that app because tickets are going to be hard to get. Tickets are going to be hard to come by. And I wouldn't use those other ticket apps to try to find the best deal. What I would do is use the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Maybe per se.
Just in terms of what do you mean by being comfortable at 25?
Like, do you feel like there is uncertainty given that you're that far back, or do you all feel like you all have like a good group of guys that you all would feel good at number 25 if it came down to that?
Yeah, no, we're always prepared to pick. And if we pick at 25, we're going to get a good football player. So, I mean, that's what we're focused on. So, I mean, honestly, like, we feel good about this draft. I mean, there's players littered throughout the draft. So, we're pretty well positioned. Right now, we don't have a fourth-round pick. You know, we got the top four in the top, 40, or excuse me, four in the top 89. Don't have a fourth, got a fifth, don't have a sixth, have 2 sevens. So, we'll have an opportunity, we think, throughout the draft to add players that we think are going to create some competition on this football team. So, I mean, I'd say whoever we bring in, I mean, it's going to be hard to make this football team. So, I mean, just try to get the right players. But we feel good about the players. I mean, our board's probably smaller than some other boards, and that's okay. But, I mean, there'll be players that pick on Thursday. There's going to be players that pick on Friday. Honestly, there's going to be players for us to pick on Saturday that we actually feel good about. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to get a good player if we pick at 25. So, and if we don't pick at 25, then wherever we pick next or whenever we do pick, we think we're going to get a pretty good player.
Battle Red Nation. Welcome back to Thursday edition of the Locked On Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. This is the Nick Pick Caserio.
Nitpicking.
All right, John. Nick said a lot in that, right? Nick said a whole lot.
Alexander, that was his question.
Yeah, shout out to JM our guy, JMAR guy. John, he said a lot of things in that answer, but the one thing that caught my attention was the last part, and I will talk about that when it's my turn to go. But John, at number 25, do you believe that the Houston Texans will stay there? Do you believe that the Houston Texans will draft for need or best player available? Or is this another situation where you think that Nick Caserio is just giving us fluff and not telling us exactly what they're going to do?
I don't think it's fluff because they did the same thing last year and they ended up with Kamar Lassiter. And so I think that one thing that my biggest takeaway from this, and again, shout out to Jonathan Alexander. I thought that was a great question. He said, we feel good about the draft. He also mentioned our board is smaller than other draft boards. And I'm going to stop it right there because To me, that screams from 25, which is where they set it last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
To 42. Let's just say that because that's where they ended up drafting Kamari Lassiter. We have a handful of guys that we really like, that we believe can come in and be essentially day one impact players, and that we've been scouting and keeping an eye on the rest of the boards and the rest of the needs around the NFL so we can be prepared if that player isn't there or if that player is there. But if we have a couple of the players that we really like, can we move down? Can the board get a little bit more flexible for us? Because he also mentioned that we don't have a fourth rounder this year. We don't have a seventh rounder this year. We got a couple of sixth rounder this year. They don't have one, but they got a couple of sevens. So maybe 25 is a pick, I'm sorry, guys, for them to look at the board, see who's going to be available, and use that pick to leverage gaining more picks on the back end. So I think that's where we got to look at Nick Caserio. He's going to play the board. I also love him saying, listen, our board is smaller than most other boards. I think that speaks directly to the confidence that they have in the current roster and also the confidence in especially on the offensive side and the coaching staff to say that we may not have to go out and get the Emeka Buka if he's there, or the Luther Burden if he's there. There's guys in this draft, because he mentioned players on Saturdays we really like. There's guys in this draft that can come in and coach can get them right, fit will get them right, and we can maximize our opportunities in this draft because the pick 25 can kind of become a little bit sexier for teams that may want to trade back into the first round. So my biggest takeaway from that is be prepared for Houston to move around.
John, I agree with you. And the last part of Nick Caserio's statement where he said, yeah, going to get a good player if we pick at 25. If we don't pick at 25, then wherever we pick next, we think we're going to get a pretty good player. I don't like that. Then wherever we pick next. If we don't pick at 25, then wherever we pick next. So, Nick, are you saying that you're already prepared to trade out of the first round, knowing that you do have needs at 2? You're on mute, John.
I'm sorry.
What did you say?
I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say it's a predetermined idea or thought that he's going to trade back. But I do think, again, I mentioned the other day, Booker, Connolly, Banks, and a few other guys. They have a core between 3 to 10 guys to where at pick 25, they'll look at the situation and say, okay, 4 of the guys that we really like are still available. Can we risk moving back to get some more capital for some Saturday guys? You mentioned we got some players on Saturdays we really like. Can we move back to get into a little bit fair range for us later in the draft and still be able to hit on the guys that we really like at the top of our draft boards? He's mentioned the draft board all offseason.
Yeah, but this is the first time I heard him say, "Oh, wherever we pick next." John, I just don't like and the reason why I'm saying this is I just don't feel that there is a bunch of ready to play right now talent in this draft in the later rounds. I don't feel like that and there could be, don't get me wrong. Just Nick has said from day one, the NFL draft is a crapshoot. Either you win or you crap out. He said it's one of the other. And so there is no specialized formula that you can go in that you can use every year to win on the draft. Either you're going to win it or you're going to lose it. So you got to take the risk, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And I get that part. But when you have a draft like what you have right now, this draft to me is top heavy when it comes to talent. I've said that on more than one occasion. And so when you start to look at the later rounds and the talent that's going to be in the later rounds, yes, that will be great for a team that's rebuilding, not for a team that has taken the next step out of that rebuilding phase and is ready to win right now. You're not talking about the Houston Texans ready to win in the next 3 years. No, the Houston Texans need to be ready to win next year. So whatever you have to do to find day one starter talent that's going to come in and give the type of competition that they need to be in that spot, whether that be offensive lineman, whether that be wide receiver, you got to get somebody in there that hits the ground running. You know what? Like a player like a Kamari Lassiter. Last year, I felt like there was a lot of talent in that draft. So you're looking
in
at
that cornerback position too.
Right. And so now that's what I'm saying. When you look at the positions that we're talking about, I just don't feel that their position of need, like best player available at 25, may not be a wide receiver, may not even be an offensive lineman. Maybe what we talked about on Wednesday's show could be an edge rusher or a defensive tackle.
I want to ask something. We are playing around with the idea of Houston moving back. But if the board is smaller than other drafts, and if they believe in a 7th round, they got some players that they feel like can play. Some players in the Saturday part of the draft, day 3, that they feel like can play. And we feel good about the draft. This is all the things that he said. Who's to say they won't trade up?
I've been saying that. You've been saying a player.
Yeah, no, because after just kind of registering what he said, what Nick Caserio had to say, who's to say that their draft board isn't as big as others because they only have a few players on their board that they feel like can come in and help get this team over the hump. And those players could be players that are more so available at 18 to 24 compared to 25 and 40.
John, was Jerry Shaplinski was with the Rams last season as well, right?
I think he was with the Raiders.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm not okay. So I thought that they picked up two people from the Rams organization. One in being offensive coordinator Nick Caley, but they also picked up someone else.
I take that back. He was with the Rams last year. Please forgive me.
Okay, so Jerry Shaplinski was right. So because I knew they got 2 people from the Rams. So you got Nick Caley from the Rams. You got Jerry Shaplinski from the Rams. You know what they were a part of, John, with the Rams? F them picks.
Yeah.
F them picks. You have them. And what did they do? What did the Rams do with that mindset of, hey, F them picks?
They went out champion.
And they won a Super Bowl, John. They
traded
won a
for
Super
Matthew
Bowl.
Stafford, traded for Jalen Ramsey. Yeah.
So right now, hey, look, you need to be in win now mode. And if that means you got to give up some draft capital later on, okay, cool. I'm going to be honest with you. If I'm Nick Caserio, I'm planning to be with the Texans. For years and years. I'm operating like this is my last year. Go big or go home, John.
Yeah. When we come back, O-line investments hadn't paid off for Houston. The dial is down on the Houston Texans offensive line investments. And so we'll talk about that. Pretty good question from Landry Locker and more on today's show. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job with LinkedIn, and their new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip, add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires more than anybody else. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parsons and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, the draft is around the corner. Get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Big Sarge, before we dive into the offensive line investments and how those have not been panning out for Houston, they've been thirsting for a star offensive lineman in the draft. Here is Landry Locker's question.
Going back to the offensive line and the process, you guys have had the most invested, are among the top of the league, most invested in the offensive line, and it really kind of hasn't translated on the field. Given that, outside of getting rid of players and coaches, does that process maybe require a little bit more tweaking than other processes, given what the results have been based on the investment?
Yeah, we always look at everything. So, I mean, just try to, in the end, try to make the decisions that we feel, are in the best interest of the team. It's always case by case. Each year is going to be a little bit different. So, contracts are contracts. I mean, it's just part of the process. So, we'll look at everything, and if there's something that we feel we can improve, we'll look at it. And if not, then, we'll kind of keep moving forward. So, I don't think there's anything, wholesale that we feel like we got to do, that much differently.
John, why are you looking like that, John? Why?
I mean, this is, and again, I like this question from Landry because I think it put Nick Caserio, his back against the wall, and that response told me everything that I needed to know, and that is Nick knows and understands that they have to get it right.
Yeah,
they have to. Right. It's nowhere around it, and I think with the addition of Nick Caley and Cole Popovich, having more of a say-so and being more of a voice in that room, Sarge, I think the combination of those minds will help Houston get it right in terms of the type of player that they need up front, but there's no way around it. They know that they need to, and you've been saying this all offseason, so hey, listen, replace Laremy Tunsil, whether it be on the left or the right side, and it seems like the right side is taken care of. But for your anchor for the offensive line, the person who will protect C.J. Stroud the most, the left tackle or maybe a stout guard, they have to get it right. It's no way around it. Because if you don't, this will be the third time you missed out on Kenyon Green. It's up in the air right now between Juice Scruggs and Jared Patterson. So that's understandable and fair. But at no point are we saying that this is a definitive perennial starter on this offensive line for none of those guys, and one of those guys are not on the team anymore. They have to get it right, and investments got to start paying off up front.
All right, John, two things. One, I guess the main question would be, how do they get it right? You try to get it right through the draft, but once again, you don't know how these players are gonna pan out and what they're going to be able to do once you get them on the team. Two, you can't do it through free agency because just like the Houston Texans need offensive linemen, other teams need offensive linemen, and when they become free agents, or when it's time for them to become free agents, or their team just go ahead and extends them and gives them the amount of money that they want, and then they don't become available. It's hard to get some of these good offensive linemen. With that being said, Johnny said contracts are contracts, right? I honestly and truly believe that the one thing that's going to hold the Houston Texans back as far as the offensive line is concerned this year, because they have a left tackle on their roster, and I don't mean Cam Robinson. They have a left tackle that can play that left tackle position if you put him out there, and that's Titus Howard. The problem comes in, Titus is going to be up for an extension, and you don't want to give him. You don't want to give Titus left tackle money. That's what they're trying to avoid, in my opinion. The way that I feel like, hey, move Titus to left guard, then we'll pay him left guard money.
That was something that I mentioned when they made the move. He is no longer the highest paid. He's going to be playing guard, but this year he won't be playing guard at a tackle premium money. And when they redid his contract, that helped Houston out a lot.
Exactly. So now you put Titus out. I think I read a stat today where it says in the last 3 years, Titus has 0 holding penalties. And when you look at some of the players that he's won against, John, he hasn't dominated at the right tackle position. He hasn't dominated a lot of players at that position, but he has held his own. If you go back and you look at some of the games he's played, especially against, I'm going to say Pittsburgh Steelers defensive end, edge rusher, TJ Watt. Like, go back and look at some of those games. Titus Howard has won a lot of those battles versus TJ Watt, and I'm just using him as an example. So you put Blake Fisher on the right tackle, you move Titus over to the left tackle. Titus balls out at the left tackle. We're just doing hypotheticals here. Titus balls out at that left tackle. Now Titus is up for an extension. Then you get back to the same, John, they go back and let me take you back down memory lane. They're going to run into the same situation that they ran into with Jadeveon Clowney. Do we pay him handing the dirt money or do we pay him standing up money? Titus is they're going to want to pay him guard money, interior offensive line money. Titus is going to want left tackle money. So I feel like that's one of the games that they're playing. But hey, Nick, you said contracts are contracts.
What do we come away with today?
Hey, listen, I like Nick. I think Nick, and he gave me a very good answer, so I loved it.
We'll look at that question tomorrow. I thought that was a very good question from you, asking about the difference between combines and pro days. And I think that can help lead to the question of what will Houston do in this draft. Shout out to UT. He mentioned University of Texas, so we'll dive into that. A big takeaway for me, and I'm going to say this really quick. What you're looking for, the splash, the big move, could very well be in the draft. And I think Houston has a list of players. I don't think Kelvin Banks is going to last to 25 with teams like Arizona needing to tackle, right? I don't think Josh Connolly is going to last to 25, right? I think Booker can, but I think some of these players, Matthew Golden is a favorite from everybody in the fan base. Emeka Ibuka, I don't think these guys are going to necessarily last until 25.
Dallas needs a wide receiver, so they may take Golden at 12.
Yeah. So, like, you're right. Teams need some of the same needs Houston needs, but some of those teams aren't in the same situation that Houston is in. So, for Houston, do you sacrifice now for later, or do you figure it out in a draft for later in the draft? And so, we'll look into more of Nick Caserio's. Hold on, 3, 2, 1. So, we'll look at more of Nick Caserio's press conference on tomorrow's show to close out the week and to open up next week as well. But thank you guys for watching today's episode. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast.
And make sure you follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Big Star Sports with the Z at the end.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.